Quilt Co. I'm Danae. Today I am diving into my whips and will finally be adding sashing and borders to quilt blocks that my quilt group swapped all the way back in November of 2015. We used the dwell pattern from Roskelley's Simply Retro book, and the fabric requirement was to use any Bonnie and Camille fabric line to ensure all the blocks would complement each other beautifully. I absolutely love these blocks and this pattern, so I'm a little bit embarrassed that it's taken me so long to get this quilt top put together, but today that's all about to change. I really had to rack my brain to remember what solid we used for the sashing and borders. I finally recalled that it was Bella 98. So here I have my Bella 98 all starched and cut according to the pattern. I have my vertical sashing subcut along with my horizontal sashing and border strips sewn together. Before I start sewing, I lay out my quilt blocks in the order that I want them in the finished quilt. Next, I'll take my top row over to the sewing machine and sew my sashing in between each house using my 1/4 inch seam. Here's my top row, all sewn and pressed. Next, I'm gonna take my vertical sashing strip and I'm gonna line it up at the bottom of my houses and pin. Once it's all pinned, I'm gonna trim the excess and sew the same 1/4 inch seam. I've got my first strip of vertical sashing done, and I love to cut corners and to quilt faster just like everyone else, but in the case of sashing, especially the long strips, I highly recommend you do not skip the pinning. It really does make such a difference, and it just ensures that your sashing and borders aren't going to be wavy. Now I'll follow the same process for my second row. Sew the vertical sashing, press, and then once they're all sewn together, add my horizontal sashing, remembering to pin. Here's my second row, all sewn together, and the sashing at the bottom. And now I'm gonna add my top row to it and pin the sashing to the top of my houses. Then I'll head in my sewing machine and sew my 1/4 inch seam, and I'll continue on with the next row. One of my best tips when you're sewing your rows together is I like to sew the top half of the quilt as one unit and then the bottom half as a separate unit. Then I join the two big sections together. It really helps manage the weight and bulk at the machine, and it's especially helpful with larger quilts like this one. Now I have all my houses sewn together with the sashing, and it's time for the borders. And just like with my horizontal sashing, I don't like to trim my fabric before I pin it in place, so I'll pin it first, then trim the ends, and then I'll sew my 1/4 inch seam. In order to pin it, I like to lay it on the largest flat surface that I have, often that's the floor, just to keep everything straight and tight and to make sure we avoid any sort of waves or wrinkles in the borders. I'll usually start with the side borders and do the top, but in this case the pattern called for doing the top and bottom first and then the side, so I'll follow the pattern for that. Quilt top all sewn together, and it's absolutely adorable. If you also find sashing and borders to be your least favorite part of quilting, I hope that these tips help to make the process quicker and a little bit more enjoyable. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. See y'all next time.